today.
What happened to the intro?
I
You
know.
complained once and they played the wrong intro. What
Well
is
done,
happening
lads.
here?
Well done.
Welcome to KimAppa. Jared Kimber here. Robbie Otapa with me as well. Robbie, just before we started, was like, I couldn't watch the test match anymore.
Yeah,
it was
it
depressing.
hurt. It hurt too much, yeah, man.
So
It
let's
was
start with
like-
that then.
Yes. It was like, oh man, what is happening?
Were you as depressed as I was that just more wickets didn't fall? Is that what your issue was? Or was it maybe slightly more India related?
Oh, definitely more India related. Yeah, but like there's always going to be a part of me that says, "Oh man, I want to get in the depths of cricket, but I also want India to be on on the winning side of any match that they play." So it certainly hurt because I thought we did everything we could with the bat. We could have been better. As in, if you're gonna pick on things, then yeah, as in I think the low middle order and the tail not firing, you can't afford that in test matches. You cannot afford drop catches in test matches. Not when the bowlers have to bowl on a wicket like that and take 20 wickets to win a test match. You can't make it 25 or 27 wickets for them to take and still expect them to win test matches.
Well, if you think about it, they went in with a weakened bowling attack slightly anyway, right? Like they went in with one non-specialist bowler and then Jadeja was more of a holding bowler in this game and then drop catches. And I think in the history of CricViz, they said it was the most drop catches in a test match in England, right? Like that's a phenomenal amount of missed chances. And look, you do have to make more than 20 chances, right? Like we all know that. There's always an element of making, an umpire might not give you one and you've run out of reviews, or you might forget to appeal for something, or what, you generally have to make more chances. But India put themselves into a position where they had to make like 32 chances, right, to win this test.
Yeah. And that was going to be very hard to do, right? And you're already bowling with a slightly depleted bowling lineup where you have a gun bowler like Bumrah, and the other guys just seem so lackluster at this point in time that it just was like, oh my God, this guy will break down and then some if he has to do everything and have catches dropped of his bowling. That was hard to watch, to be very honest. The bowling was hard to watch, and you knew that with the way both teams were batting, you knew that India needed at least 450 going in, going into those last 1.5 days of the test match if they want to defend the score. That track was a great track to bat on. Now, yes, there were some rough spots on it, and it did a little bit, but it wasn't all that, right?
It's a funny wicket. I was looking at the stats yesterday. I don't know if you've seen the video, but the wicket it reminds me the most of is the whacker. Do you remember that period when the whacker got really easy to bat on? And essentially, it was hard to get a wicket, especially later on in the game in the whacker, unless the crack opened up. If the crack opened up, you were in all sorts of trouble. But then the bowlers had to be good enough to hit it. But you get little cracks at Headingley. You don't get big cracks like the whacker. And once that sideways movement sort of disappears after day 3 and day 4, which we see a lot at Headingley, it's like you just make runs. Like there's nothing else that really comes on that wicket, right? There's little bits of inconsistency, but not enough for you to blast through a team, right? Like how it was really noticeable how early on Shubman Gill looked at that and just went, our best chance is like with catching covers and catching short mid wickets and short mid ons and stuff, because he could already tell that it wasn't going to be a normal cricket pitch, and Headingley just completely changes the game. The whacker is the closest I can find, but realistically, it's not even that close to the whacker. It just becomes such a ridiculously good surface. And the hilarious thing is, it doesn't do that in first class cricket. This is just the thing that happens in test cricket. It just, by day 4 and day 5, it just completely evens out every time.
Well, yeah, it's also the quality of cricket, right? I think there's a big jump from first class cricket to test cricket. Right, and I think the quality of bowlers, the people who can exploit the conditions, and the skills that they have to exploit said conditions are way more, and it's way more nuanced as well, and they have a lot more control than first-class cricketers do have. So, in that sense, I think you will experience it a lot more in Test cricket than in first-class cricket. For me, I think one of the things that kind of bothered me, perhaps, was the body language of the Indian team. it was almost like they were recluse to the fact that, okay, we hope to win, but somebody has to make something happen. And it just felt like the energy in the group was very different when a Bumrah was bowling versus anybody else bowling, right? And right now with India's bowling unit, it looks like it's a one-man army, and they really need guys to step up. I think the inconsistency of the lengths that were bowled by the bowlers, the other fast bowlers, weren't were one of the reasons that England scored with the kind of pace that they scored at. And you're giving very little margin of error to a bowler like Bumrah. He's human after all. He's going to have off spells, off sessions. That's going to happen during the course of a test match, right? And right now, it doesn't feel like he has any of that room or that margin of error whatsoever, and that puts a lot of pressure on him. Puts a lot of pressure, and doesn't puts a lot of pressure on the team as a whole, and doesn't augur well for the team. And I think they have to come up with a strategy that, one, immediately improves the fielding, the catching of the Indian team.
Yeah.
And the bowling, the bowling needs to step up, because it's the bowlers that win your test matches.
It reminds me a lot of watching Bumrah at the moment and we didn't watch Richard Hadley or Faisal Mahmood, but there's an element of Murali, right? But Murali could bowl forever, and so it didn't matter if there was like a gap at the other end, because Murali was just going to bowl the entire test match. But the thing it really reminds me of is in the NBA and the Joker for the Nuggets. Everything the Nuggets have tried to do when he's off the court has never worked, because when he's on the court, they play basketball in a way that no one's ever played basketball before, because no one's ever had a 7-foot point guard who can just see everything around him, right? And the minute you put anything else, it's like it has to be a drain, right? There has to be an emotional and intellectual drain when it comes off. And it's like, it's not like these other players, when they play for the Nuggets, they're terrible. Then they go to another side and they do fine, right? Like there is something going on, and it's however you work out how to the intellectual side of that, the spiritual side of that, whatever it is, there is a moment right now where it's like, if Bumrah has the ball, it feels like anything is possible. And if he doesn't have the ball, it feels like nothing is possible. And that doesn't make sense, because at times in this test match, all the bowlers, right? Maybe not Shardul, although I know he took a couple of wickets, but all the bowlers put together some pretty good spells. Like Jadeja had a couple of good spells. Siraj had a couple of good spells. Prashant Krishna had a fantastic spell, right? Where he almost brought India back into the game. But they don't do it anywhere near as consistently as you would expect players of their talent to do it.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And the thing is, players of that caliber, for them to, in a sense, survive Test cricket and play for a long period of time, have to develop their consistencies and the ability to perform said skill that's required on that particular day, on that particular wicket, consistently enough for them to become match winners and to have a long career, so to speak. And that's why I think we see a huge churn of bowlers, fast bowlers in India, because a lot of them are tried. They have a lot of potential, but that potential being realized into true outcomes are not necessarily there. And I think it's the guys who can bring out those outcomes consistently are the ones that will stay the test of time and stand the test of time. Right now, in that bowling lineup, Siraj does have the potential. Prasid does have the potential. Even on a wicket like Headingley, right? You want to be able to do it not on wickets that help you, but on wickets that actually don't offer much to you, that offer very little to you. And as of now, that doesn't exist in a consistent, meaningful way for the Indian fast bowlers, even as far as Prasid is concerned or Siraj is concerned. For me, Siraj is a much better bowler than how he's bowled in this previous Test match. And he just needs to get disciplined and be consistent enough about hitting one length. And I almost feel like he's trying too much. He's trying too hard. And the moment he gets kind of disciplined and he says, okay, I'm just going to hit the ball there, focus on the process of hitting the ball there long enough and trusting in the fact that if I hit those areas with the way I'm bowling right now, with the rhythm I have right now, if I hit those areas often enough, the outcomes will be there. It feels like he's chasing outcomes right now rather than just staying with the process.
I've always felt with him that he just doesn't really always understand what it is that makes him fantastic. Do you know what I mean? Like because he came to cricket so late,
Absolutely.
and he doesn't understand all those gifts, and so he's kind of chasing. And I've always compared him to Stuart Broad as this sort of bowler who, like, Stuart Broad spent all of his career like tinkering, right? Because Stuart Broad was a batter who suddenly became a fast bowler when he was about 18 or 19, and so he was always trying to work out what the right thing was. Whereas Jimmy Anderson was just born a bowler, right? He just came in, it was rhythmic, and it's a very different kind of thing. And with Siraj, you're just like, you have the best three-quarter seam wobble ball in the world. Like it seems back like a friggin' off spinner. And then you have a very good normal wobble ball. Just bowl the same delivery over and over again in those two
Exactly.
places until your captain says, let's go for bouncers, let's go for Yorkers, or whatever other tactic that you have. But you see him and he's like, well, that didn't work. I'll try this. It's like, no, you don't need to do that because no one could get the seam movement that he gets. I don't think regular fans understand this. Like his seam movement is ridiculous. Like it's off the charts. And so
Yeah,
if he
it
could
is.
just focus on that over and over again, but he finds it really, really hard to be able to do that. And I've seen cricketers like him before who are like late developing cricketers. I remember Dirt Nannis was another one where like Victoria literally had to put like David Hussey and Bryce McGain at mid on and mid off, just be like, stop trying a new thing. You
Yeah.
bowl 90 miles an hour with your left arm. Just hit the pitch back of a length and angle it across, and no one will ever be able to play you. But Dirk's like, but what about if I try? No, you don't need to try this. You have the natural
Yeah.
gift already.
Yeah, and that's the hard part for captains and senior players to deal with, right? To get that discipline going and just to trust the skills you already possess, which are world class, right? And I think sometimes in the geniuses of these abilities that these players possess, they often are blessed with too much skill and too much ability, and
It's always been
they
my problem.
them. I can tell. It's like the amount of content that you put out there is like, which one do I consume right now?
Just too much skill is always been my problem.
Yeah, it's more a curse than a blessing, eh?
I've always said that. I've always said that. Let's talk about England a little bit here. Michael Vaughan said the phrase "baseball with brains," and it's basically what I talked about with Bayram on my podcast last night, which is the issue with baseball is not that it's a bad theory, because I think it's a brilliant idea, right? Like I love some of the concepts behind it. I like the idea of not just saying that Test cricket has to be played this way because Test cricket's always been played this way, of using your strengths and everything else and disrupting the game, right? Like I love all that. The problem is that when you tell everyone how you're going to play before each game, it means that every opposition can plan for it. And not only that, they could just lull you into traps the way that Australia kept doing against England, the way that India did in last series at times as well, knowing that they're just going to keep going hard, right? And that they're going to put themselves into that. And the other problem is if you are using a theory like a strategy, other teams can eventually just copy it, right? They can use the best bits against it because once you put it out in the ether, anyone can use it. The real skill for England is that ability to use baseball when it works for them and then play normal cricket when they're in control. And if you look at that chase yesterday, that's kind of what they did. There wasn't many major risks that they took, but they took a couple. But essentially, they just batted like normal people because the pitch was in their favor, and they're not afraid of chasing because of the stuff that they've done earlier in baseball. That's the difference between them being a really successful team and being a team that is going to just completely fizzle out.
You know what that's called? That's called first movers advantage,
Yeah.
right? And for me, I think when you're the first mover, this is a lot like Tesla, right? When they came out with their cars initially with their EVs, they open sourced the whole thing, right? And despite them open sourcing the whole thing, and despite there being so many other really high quality car companies that have built their companies on the back of the open source stuff that Tesla did, Tesla still are well and truly ahead of the curve. Because what the advantage that a first mover has is that they get to the knowledge first, and so they work out all the chinks in the armor that can put the potential chinks in the armor that can exist and that exists there, and they know how to utilize it best, right? And I think with this form of cricket, or baseball as we call it, I think the chinks in the armor have been addressed, and they know on what conditions they work best, right? And so when they're playing home tours or home matches, they set up the wickets, the bowlers, the players within the in their 15, in the group, in the 11, in such a way that it gives them the best chance to be successful. And which is why it's even the total, even as an opposition side, felt like, hey, this is not intimidating enough for us. This should be a walk in the park for us if we do everything that we need to do to get to the result that we need to. And they did it with so much confidence that India knew, and I think even us watching the game, I didn't watch the whole test match, but even when I watched it in bits and pieces through the day, it just felt like, oh man, at this point, like you could tell the energy in on television. It was palpable that England at all times, even though India performed so well, England at all times had a slight upper hand because it felt like they knew the way, like they knew like the back of their hand how they were going to go about their business. And I think that's the advantage of the first mover that they possess at this point in time with the form of cricket that they're playing. And I think other teams will have a lot more, what do you say, space to create opportunities if the conditions are different. Because baseball at England is more controllable in that sense. But when you take that same, same format or same form of approach to cricket to say in Australia or to in India, where conditions are not in your control, I think the outcomes can vary.
Yeah, I mean, I think
And the
that's fair.
good
I
thing
mean,
is they've decided to kind of go with it, right? And they're staying with the same form of cricket across the world, right? They're not changing their
no,
format around.
no, and the truth is though that there's an element of like, and this test match is a perfect example of it. And having been following them since 2022, you actually have to beat England, which is very different than in other tests through history where you can just stay in front. Right? You stay in front until the end of the game, whereas you have to kill off England. And it's the same in that. Remember when they were really good in white ball cricket? It was the same thing. The way to beat England was to bowl them out. Right, like the way it wasn't to try and be economical, or because eventually they were just going to outscore you if they stayed out there. But if you dismiss them, and this is what this is backed on. But the other side, it means that you always have that thing of England can storm back into this game because of how quickly they can change the game, which means that you play with a cautiousness against them that you maybe wouldn't normally play. Right, normally you just play comfortably within yourself. But the thing with England is that if they can match that with playing to the conditions, I mean, you talk about the conditions and everything being part of baseball, but they also don't always play towards the conditions. Like sometimes when they're massively in front, they keep taking big risks, right? And it's like, you don't need to take big risks when you're massively in front. And you look at this, in this situation, it would have been very easy for Crawley, who was not batting particularly well and was struggling and, had a little bit of luck, to just go nuts and start trying to hit out, right? And that's what he would have done in the previous sort of baseball era. Whereas if now they're coming to a point where it's like, actually, one of us is scoring quickly and the other one's not. Let's just stay in for as long as we can. That's a whole different game. That's when you're using all the available options to you, not just your strategy. And it got a bit Kool-Aid-y before, I think, where they were just like, oh, we have to do this because we have to win every moment and entertain. And it's like, no, you don't. That's not how test matches are played at all. So I thought it was really fascinating the way they went about it. We talked about the bowling a little bit with India. The only way that you can win a test match...
Can I add a point here?
You can add 2 points.
So I think as you were speaking, I think what came to me is, it's also about balance, right? It's about finding the right balance to make something that you think will bring you success work, right? And you feel like, okay, I'm disrupting. And today, and what we experienced in this test match was actual disruption, right? This is the proof of the disruption that England have been pursuing for a period of time right now, right? And I think they've nailed it. They've nailed it in this test match, and I think they have a huge source of a lead and advantage in home conditions. They're still figuring out that aspect and that pretty result in other conditions and away from home, right? And I think in life in general, also that the only way to balance is through imbalance, right? So it's like a seesaw, right? And you go on one edge, and then you go on the other edge, and then eventually you find that sweet spot. And I think the result of this test match was that absolute sweet spot for England, And I think maintaining the balance is going to be key for someone like England as they go from one venue to the other. And how do they find the sweet spot as they go from one venue to the other?
No, I agree. I think it's fascinating. I also think it's fascinating that India is in this really, really weird twist at the moment where you can only win test matches by taking 20 wickets most of the time, some declaration games, but generally you need to take 20 wickets. And they also have a tail that is non existent, right? And they tried to strengthen the tail with a guy who I think he's a fun time batter. He's a chaos hitter, but I'm not sure he's like going to change their batting all that much from number 8. And so they gave back a little bit with the ball for that. They are in a really awkward situation. I can't think of many teams that have had that don't have 4 good bowlers without one of them being like a decent batter. Like it generally, someone can hold the bat a little bit better, right? Like Vernon Philander, right? Like just someone as simple as Vernon Philander would make a very big difference in this kind of a lineup. I'm not talking about his bowling. I'm talking about his batting here. They just don't have anyone. So all these different bowlers, they're gonna just have to be like, once we have lost 6 wickets, we might be all out, which is a very weird place to be as a cricket team, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think, again, not comparing oranges to oranges here, just like take it as comparing apples to oranges. Now, I think if you're gonna look at an all-rounder in the 11s of each side, the all-rounders well and truly are Ben Stokes and Shardul Thakur, right? There's no
And
comparison. Jadeja as well, but I'm talking fast bowling all-rounder,
Yeah.
right? And from that perspective, the two that we can talk about here is Shardul to a Ben Stokes, right? And Shardul is a bowler who can bat, right? But Ben Stokes is an out-and-out all-rounder, right? He bats as well as he bowls. He's as effective as a batter.
I think he might be England's best bowler at the moment.
Yeah, in this side, yeah, perhaps. But also you're comparing the rest of the bowlers to an Anderson and a Broad and the likes of them, right? So, is that fair? I don't know. It's debatable. And these guys are just youngsters coming through the ranks.
Oh, no, I'm not. I just mean at the moment, if you were... Like every time he had the ball, I felt England were in a better position than when he didn't have the ball, and some of that's just form. That's
you
not
could see
just.
you could see the shift in the energy in the group as well while they were fielding. They were a lot more anticipatory. They were like, okay, something's going to happen now.
Exactly.
The batters also batted with that kind of energy. They're like, okay, we need to be watchful against this guy. This guy can break a partnership here. So if you have to compare like an out-and-out all-rounder that exists in the Indian team, that is, a fast bowling all-rounder that of the same skill set, not skill level, but skill set of a Ben Stokes is for me Nitish Kumar Reddy, right? Right now, he's the only one that exists in the Indian setup right now who probably bats as well as he bowls. Maybe slightly better batter, but I think the more he bowls, he'll get better. And for me, the one I think point, in my opinion, that they missed was fielding a player like him in the 11, because just as a viewer and someone who's played cricket, for me, I felt like that would have augured well a lot more. And he would have you could have defined a role to him as a bowler and said to him, okay, this is your role. And I don't think that's been given and defined to the bowlers as well. Right, you know that Bumrah is your out-and-out match winner as the bowler, and he's the guy you need to click. And then you are saying you can't have 3, match winners unless they've developed themselves into that. As far as bowling is concerned, I hope I'm making sense, right?
Yeah. So you're basically saying role definition of these guys. They need to know where they are.
Like even if it means from session to session, spell to spell. Like, for example, Bumrah and Siraj start off and you're considering both of them match winners. But forget based on form, just based on potential and ability I'm talking about here, right? And based on that, if Bumrah and Siraj start off and Bumrah gets wickets at the front end, immediately Siraj goes into, if he's not seeming as effective in that first spell, he goes into, okay, I'm just going to support Bumrah here and hit the right lengths and make sure I keep it quiet here and keep that pressure that he's building from that end going so that he becomes more effective whilst he's bowling, right? Bowling in partnerships, as we call it, right? And similarly, you define the role to, okay, when say Prasidh and Siraj is bowling, who plays what role based on how they're bowling and the form that they're in, right? It doesn't seem like that's defined at this point in time. And even if it is defined, it's being followed, right? And I think those aspects are nuanced aspects that teams and team management need to do and define and make sure they're executed by the captain on the field and the senior players who are standing in mid on and mid off, right? And that's where that communication, the senior pros actually take that responsibility and say, okay, this is the role you're playing, and that needs to be followed so that we give ourselves the best chance to be successful in this test match. And I feel like those things are not defined. Like even Shardul yesterday at the end when he was trying to get what's that the young wicketkeeper's name? James, is it? Smith. Yeah, Smith. He was trying to get him out. You could see that, okay, there was a plan that he was going to, but it seemed like, what is the plan? It seemed like he had an individual plan, and India on a whole, or the vibe on the whole at the test match was like, let's get through this period for the next 6 or 7 overs so that we get the new ball and give as many runs as possible to get Bumrah in and give him a chance to get wickets. But just the way they went about that last 1.5 hours felt like it was not all there, you know? It was not all defined. He was trying to get him out inside edge because he chopped the ball on, missed the stumps a few times. And then it felt like he was doing that. And then Smith just got disciplined and then started nudging that same ball instead of trying to hit it in front of covers or in front of point for 4. He just started opening the face of the bat and scoring boundaries down a third man. These are things that get a lot more controllable when roles are defined for bowlers. And I don't think that was done in this test match with the Indian bowling lineup.
Yeah, I get that. And what you're talking about is more when you have the bowlers within the game, how they each perform individually. The interesting thing about this is, as good a cricketer as Nitesh is, I'm not sure he makes them more likely to take 20 wickets than Shardul does, right? He does make them...
It's funny you say that. I disagree with you, though. Because I'll tell you what, I'll tell you why I disagree with you, right? I think they will still score, the way England are batting, they will still score runs at a quick nip, but they have to be like, and this is where the captain needs to come to the fray here, right? And I think here, when a defensive bowler is bowling and there's a role that's defined him, say for example, we use Nitish Kumar Reddy, just for conversation's sake, we're using him as a defensive bowler who's just going to keep one end tight. And he's allowed to give 2 to 3 runs every over, right? And with that, you set the field accordingly, and then you set a defensive field and you just stay disciplined and get him to hit one area so that the bowler at the other end, his role is defined. He's a defensive bowler, right? And you are here to do just that. I'll give you an example of what we did in first class cricket when Karnataka won the treble in first class cricket. We won it twice in 2 years. What we did is say Vinay Kumar and Mithun and S. Arvind were the main fast bowlers. All 3 match winners, all 3 could win matches single-handedly on the back of their bowling. Stuart Binney was a support bowler, but Stuart also would have great days. And so if he had great days, then we would get, like Arvind for us was that entity. He was an absolute team man who wanted to just win and do anything in his strength to add value to win. And he would bowl that fifth stump channel so well, Kimbo, so well. And Vinay would set a defensive field. There'd be 1 or 2 slips. So just in case he veered towards the fourth or the fifth stump and the batsman flashed at it, we had some great slip fielders and they would snap that up, right? But his role was like, bro, 5 overs, 6 overs spell, 7 overs spell, you're not giving more than 10 runs, bro. We're going to set that kind of a field for you. We're going to back you. We're going to make sure the ball does enough for you. We'll work hard on the ball as batters. You just get this role done for us. It was defined and he would do it. And he would do it with so much class, Kimbo. That just made Vinay Kumar and Mithun and the likes of them so much more effective. And they would bowl that third, fourth stump line and they bowled to take wickets. Right? Set fields accordingly.
How old was he when he bowled defensively like that?
31, 32. He
so
I've seen
Jacob Oram do it. I've seen Colin de Grandhomme do it. I've seen Shane Watson do it. Most of these guys do it when they're older, and they're really.
But he was as effective.
No, but what I mean is they do it when they're older because it's easy when you're older to understand role definition and to also to be able to bowl dry. Like bowling dry is not a great skill. So if you look at Nitesh Kumar's record across first class cricket, he goes at 3.4 runs and over in first class cricket so far, right?
Sure.
That's not particularly a defensive bowler. And if you look at him in test cricket, he goes at 4.3, right? Now, I'm not saying he can't bowl dry. What I am saying is the idea that he's going to come in and be that sort of Colin de Grandhomme type bowler and just be like, you're not going to score. is hard already for him. Then he has to do it against Bazball, right?
Correct.
Where they're going to come down the crease. So I think if this was a different team, I'm a big fan of him as a cricketer, and what you're saying is exactly what I wrote about him, I think, at the Perth test, where I was like, oh, he should be a defensive bowler. That's how you use this guy, and it'll be perfect.
Yeah.
The issue is, specifically against England, they're just going to take 2 steps down the wicket, right? And just say, well, no, you can't bowl that length anymore. Or they're going to turn around and whack him or do whatever they can. So I just don't know if either of those guys on the wickets that we're looking at now, because the weird thing about these 2 guys is, if these were traditional English wickets, you and I would both be like, these have really handy bowlers to have in England, right? You know, nibbling around, swinging it and everything else. But on the wickets that we've had 3 tests this summer, and outside of 2 days at Lords, we've basically had pretty flat, dry wickets that don't really do much for spin, that you can play through the line of your shots. You know, we saw Brian Bennett's innings. You know, we saw that incredible chase by South Africa. We saw all the runs in this game. We've seen this again and again. I just think it's tough to not be a specialist bowler. And if you go back to why Bazball originally worked really well, is what England did was they go, the chances are that most teams don't have 4 good test match bowlers at the same time, right? They might have 4 decent bowlers in their attack, but maybe the spinner can't bowl at this time, or this other guy can only bowl with a new ball. And they pick you off, Robbie. They pick you off. And I just think for a 22, 23 years old, who hasn't done this.
23,
yeah. If he's 26, 27, I'm kind of all on board. And I still think he'll become that player, right? But I saw it with Cameron Green as well, where at times it was just like, it's not that these guys aren't talented, but they're not fully developed as bowlers yet. And it's one of the big skills of England is that picking players off. But the point being is, even if he does get a couple of wickets per game, he would have to have really good bowling performances, I think, to help change the trajectory of this side. So that's why we talked about this before the series. I really like 4 frontline bowlers. And the reason I really like 4 frontline bowlers is because you think everyone can actually take a wicket, and you've still got Jadeja. So it's not as if you have a 4 only attack. You still have 5 if you want to go from that perspective. But there are massive questions all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with you. And with the way Bazball's played right now, I think it's going to be harder to be defensive. To be honest, I can agree with you on that, and it's going to be more challenging because now they play cricket all over, like 360, right? And it's like they can ramp you, reverse ramp you, and do all of that stuff, and really push you out of your areas that are mostly effective. And how do you counter that? Yes, you want to have as many specialist bowlers as possible. That makes the most sense. That's the most logical kind of place that you can go to with that. Now, does India have the quality of that 4 specialist bowlers?
That's also a good question.
That's very debatable.
If you are an Indian fan at the moment, you must be sitting there going, wait a minute, we were just saying our batting was the problem. It's just like, it's twisted around so quickly. Test cricket comes at you fast. Can I talk to you about the Bumrah 3 test thing for a moment, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not a coach and you are a coach, right? Like, so we come from this from very different perspectives. When I hear someone will only be fit for 3 tests of a 5-test series, in my brain, what I hear is he's not fit, right? So I understand the usage and they're trying to, get him through and everything else. But my brain instantly goes to, well, if you're not fit enough to play 5 tests, you're probably just not fit. And even 3 tests, maybe you won't be playing at your best. Am I seeing this wrong? Or is that something that you see as well as a coach?
No, I don't think it's about match fitness. I think it's about longevity. I think it's about having his services for as long as India can possibly have him because of his effectiveness on the field. And I think it's workload management, right? Now, today, if India had, say, a Shami who was 37, isn't he 37? Bumrah's 31. Mohammad Shami is what?
He's old.
Yeah.
38? 34.
He's saying 34, but
he's not 34.
Indian standards, let's just say 37, right? And at 37, if you had, but I'm talking like today effectiveness. Now imagine you had a Shami who was 28 with the same bowling ability that he possesses now, right? With the red ball, right? Now then you wouldn't worry about Bumrah playing just 3 test matches or Bumrah playing 5 test matches. You could push. Now, because the effectiveness of a bowler of those calibers, you have two of them, right? Now you
Yeah.
have only one of them, right? And you want to give yourself a chance to win a test series as well away from home, because playing cricket in India comes with its pressures, man. And I don't really know if people outside of India can grasp it. In fact, even people in India who aren't playing the sport can actually grasp the level of pressure that the cricketers kind of go through. I can empathize with that because it is tremendous. And I can tell you, if you get into it and you live in that space, it can be debilitating as well, right? And you have to you have to constantly live under that pressure and scrutiny all the time. Now, for example, Yashasvi Jaiswal, right? Scored 100 in the test match, but 40 runs, 50 runs before the test match got over, was interacting with the crowd, was dancing in the boundary line, right? And he's had an off time on the field, right? Now, people don't understand that he's a 23-year-old kid. Now he's going to be taken to the cleaners. And I thought about that last night when I saw him interacting with the crowd and just kind of having a laugh with them. He's going to be taken to the cleaners for that shit, right? And he's going to say, oh, here's a guy who doesn't care. And that kid will have to, he's a kid, right? Dealing with, playing as well as he's doing. One of his skills aren't working as well as they should, to the standard that it should be working. And people are going to rip him to shreds for it, right? And that level of pressure to exist from there and improve your game, or improve one aspect of your game to where it needs to be. No one's saying he does. No one is saying that he doesn't deserve the criticism. He does. But now he's going to be taken to shreds about that thing, and that's going to be 10x. The intensity of that's going to be 10x, right? And he's going to have to work on that aspect with that level of pressure, right? Now, I can imagine what it feels for him to stand in slip ever again in any match that he plays, with this looming heavily on him all the time, right? Now, the intensity of the trolls going after him, fan armies going after him, because today in cricket in India, every player is a brand, right? And they perceive themselves as such, right? And they operate in their careers as such. Everyone, and that's why cricket in India is very different from cricket in any other country, because everyone is trying to become a standalone brand of their own, which is done from the perspective of longevity, post-cricket and all of that. So it's a very different animal. And so coming back to what we were talking about, I just went away with this, didn't I?
You did. It was lovely.
So, if India, coming back to the bowling bit, if India had the quality of a Bumrah in 3 more bowlers, then they would have played him all 5 test matches and wouldn't have cared if they hit broken down. Now they have a Bumrah in red ball cricket, and they have a bowler of the same quality in white ball cricket, and that's Arshdeep Singh, right? Ideally, if you had an Arshdeep and a Bumrah bowling in test matches, and we haven't seen what Arshdeep can do in test matches. Now, unless he plays in test matches, we'll never know how his effectiveness and what he can actually reproduce there or produce there, right? Now unless we play them both in tandem, and one hopes that happens, and both of them are indispensable in the formats that they exist in at this point in time, with the kind of domination that they possess in those formats, right? Now, I can understand why the team management have gone with this, right? And why even Bumrah, the player, wants to go with this, because he's 31 years old. Like, to be very honest, with his action, with the biomechanics that he possesses, he shouldn't have lasted this long. Right?
No,
let's be fair. Like, we understand what bowlers go through. He shouldn't have lasted this long, but he has.
I get all that. So I look at workload management in a different way, which is, if you are, there's the red zone that they talk about now, right? Where the physios talk about, like, if you're putting your body to the end. Just reading between the lines and listening to Bumrah talk about it, and Gambhir a little bit, but more Bumrah talk about it, it feels like that isn't what is happening here. What they are worried about is that his back is just not 100%, and that if he plays 5 tests in a row, he's going to get injured. That, to me, is a slightly different than what you are talking about, which I also agree with, which is the sort of more, what Australia did for a little while there, where they were like, should we just rest, Cummins and Stark and Hazelwood a little bit more? Can we, rotate them? Can we bring Rabada out of games, right? And then it's like, well, you can't bring Rabada out because there isn't a Rabada replacement, whereas Australia have Boland and, they have a bit more of a natural replacement in that sort of
Sure.
situation. But it feels like that's not quite what is happening here. It feels like they're saying he has a bad back and so he can't bowl 5 tests in a row. My thought then is, if he has a bad back, should he be bowling at all? Right? Like, is there another way of looking at this? And if that was the case, also, I would argue during the IPL and during this test series, like, you're talking about someone who maybe for the next 4 or 5 years is the most important cricketer in the world, and perhaps certainly the most important cricketer in India, because as you've just said, there isn't a replacement. There isn't a second Bumrah that you or I are aware of at the moment. My Yadav is a concept, right? And we have no idea where he would go, but he's not Bumrah now. And so to me, it feels like they're trying to win this series, but I don't know. It doesn't feel right 100% that they're going about it this way. And I'm not saying I'm not saying, oh, India's done wrong. I don't want to be aggregated or anything for that. But what I mean is, if he's not able to bowl at the way that he normally should he be bowling any of the 3 test matches?
And that's and when you ask that question is when the complexities of what actually is going on comes to the fore, right? Again, you have to understand, going back to what I said about each player being a brand, right? And the career being a short one. Cricket's not a long career, right? Even at the highest levels, at your most successful levels, it's not the longest career. Now, even Virat Kohli, his international career outside of one-day cricket today has lasted what, 2011 to 2025, 14 years, right? Rahul Dravid had a 16-year career, 1996 to 2011. Sachin Tendulkar was the only one who had a 24-year career, and that is just literally little more than half of the career time span of a corporate at the highest levels.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? So you have to make life decisions because you have to provide for your family as well. Right? There's provision, there's real world implications on it, and we've discussed this in the past, where when a cricketer does finish playing, there's a huge drop in relevance, earnings, and significance, right? And then you have to take all of those complexities into consideration whilst you're trying to exist in Indian cricket today.
Yeah.
And then there are egos, and then there are your interests and the team's interests, and to align all those, and that's a rare occurrence, right? And I think we see from the outside, we observe what we see, but there's a lot more that runs deep, and you and I know that. And these are the complexities that are hard to kind of describe because it's so individualistic. It changes from player to player, and considering each player as a brand, the brand value has an impact, and you got to keep playing, you got to keep providing, and once you're used to provision at a certain quality of life, then you want to maintain that for the rest of your life. There's so many real world implications on this as well, and that's why there's no right way to go about it. You do the best with what you have, right? And I think in this case, perhaps the player also has a little bit more of a say, and that's why I think cricket in India versus cricket in the rest of the world is played very, very differently, and it's a problem of a plenty in a sense, where because you're, I don't know, man, it's just so complex to even break down and explain in a way that's meaningful. Again, Bumrah's a friend, but and a colleague, but just is not someone that I'm really close to, But when we do interact, we have really meaningful conversations. So I know that he's one of the best players in the country today, and someone who's very nuanced with the way he thinks and what he wants to do, and very loyal to his country, very loyal to his teams as an individual. So how is he balancing all of these things is something that he and the team management and BCCI will be privy to. It's not something that I actively have conversations with him about when I interact with him.
I want to ask you a completely different question now. As a batting coach, as a former batter yourself, how good is Ben Duckett?
Really, really good. And you can tell with the way he's batting right now, that guy's confidence is freaking through the roof, man.
It's ridiculous,
And
isn't it? And did you see the
it's
on drives he was playing? Where I'm like, he doesn't even really play the on drive, and he's doing that in
yeah.
this innings because he's purposely trying to play straighter. It's He's finding levels that I just didn't think. I don't even think he knew he had.
I'll tell you what, as in, I would almost say that his confidence right now in his batting abilities is almost Brendan McCallum-esque
Ah,
as an opening batter. You know what I mean?
mm,
And I'll tell you something about the on drive. As a batter, for you to play the on drive consistently, that means mentally, technically, and physically, everything is going right for you.
yeah,
For you to play it consistently, to play it straighter, but to get the on drive, based on your technique, everything must go right. The on drive, I reckon, is the toughest shot to play. And if you can play it to balls that are dipping in a little late, and you're be able to make those subtle shifts in your technique or in the way you present the bat to the ball, that gets it through that on drive mid wicket region, especially wide of mid on and mid wicket, everything needs to be going right. Especially if you're not breaking your wrists, and he's doing it so well right now. You can tell that confidence is soaring high right now for him.
So since the start of 2022, he's averaged 47. He's made 2,600 runs. He's scored 324 boundaries in that, with a strike rate of 88. You can't bowl defensively to him very well. You can slow him down, but you can't stop him scoring because he's a very good runner between the wickets, and he has that ability to drop the ball on the leg side, and so you can't keep the field up. You can't really bowl wide of off stump the way that teams want to. Teams want to essentially bowl wide of off stump to him because he has a bit of an angled bat. And when he first came back, he got nicked off a few times to South Africa. And since then, he's basically does what Travis Head does. He's just like, well, I'm just going to hit as many of them for 4 as possible. If you want to keep bowling it, you can, but I'm going to score about 30 or 40 runs. And teams always blink. Like we see it all the time with them. They always blink. So you can't really bowl too straight because he'll work you. If you give him any width, he goes away. There is a bit like Travis Head. He has that sort of channel in the middle where you can slow him down, but you can't stop him from scoring. With the spin, he's always been a decent player of spin, especially for an English player. But the confidence he has with the reverse sweeps and the sweeps just means, again, it's very hard to set a field for him. He can score square of the wicket at any time he wants because you're going to have 2 fielders out for him on either side of the boundary, right? He's a really fascinating player, and he's not. It's not as if he's averaging 70 and like, you know, or anything like, you know, it's not crazy numbers, but the combination of averaging almost 50 in this era with a strike rate of 88 is mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. And you know, for guys like this, I'm just thinking how do you, you know, keep players like these quiet, right? As aggressive batters, the options that bowlers go back to are the in and out options of field, where you have 2 attacking, like 2 wicket taking fielders, and then the in and out is basically to negate the singles. The out is to negate the boundaries, and then you have your wicket taking option deliveries, right? So there will be an opportunity there somewhere initially, right? But the minute he gets to 20 runs, you set such defensive fields to him that he gets bored of doing, like for him, he has to get bored of taking singles.
Yeah.
Right? And you gnaw away at his inability to get boundaries. Because aggressive batters, you keep them quiet as far as boundaries are concerned in red ball cricket, then they start trying stuff that is out of their wheelhouse. Right? You want to get there with batters such as these. The Travis Heads of the world, Ben Duckett, Ollie Pope's also getting about there right now, I think, with the way he's batting, at the pace that he's batting at. So, Harry Brook, one of those as well.
I get that. The one thing I would say about Duckett, more than some of those other guys that you've just said, is that when he is... He actually doesn't mind, if you watch him in limited overs cricket, he doesn't mind strike rotation, right? Whereas I think we know with Head and Brook that they're not, even when they are strike rotating, their mind is on, and Rishabh's the same, right? They're like, yeah, but we'd rather be hitting 4s and 6s. I think that's where Duckett is a bit more interesting because if you were to say to Duckett, you could just hit a single for the next hour and a half, sometimes he will take that option in a way that a lot of players as aggressive as him will not. Like Ben Stokes is another one like that. Sometimes Ben Stokes will just be like, you're going to give me the single? I will just take this. I will spam the single button as long as I have to. Whereas, so it means that you don't get that out. You don't get that explosion of frustration. I think where you can frustrate Duckett is when he can't get the singles and he can't play the big shots. And that's the tricky thing, right? Because then that's almost the magic ball. Like, where are you pitching to him at that point to be able to slow him down? And I think a length ball outside off stump is probably the best option, right? So you don't want to bowl length ball at the stumps because, as we said before, he'll turn those on the leg side. But if you can bowl that sort of top of the bails but outside off stump to him, he will eventually start to play the big cover drives, which quite often is when he nicks off. But even then, he's still scoring at almost 4 runs and over off that, right? Like, there isn't really anything at all that you can do. And because he's so short, right, especially compared to his batting partner, not only is he left-handed compared to a right-hander, he's also half the size of Zach Crawley. It's actually very hard to nail the lengths to him consistently because you're constantly changing lengths anyway, right?
And these are the nuances within baseball that teams will have to accommodate for, and the bowling coaches will have to sit down and nail strategies about lengths to each of these bowlers, right? These are the nuances that nobody really notices and talks about. I'm glad you brought it up because I was like, you know how people won't understand how challenging it is to bowl different lengths to guys who are so different in height, right? A good length ball to a Zach Crawley would be a short ball to Ben Duckett, right? So you got to make changes in that and find rhythm within that space as a fast bowler to change every ball. To bowl one ball, good length to Crawley, and the next ball, good length to Ben Duckett. What are those areas, and are you hitting them consistently enough? Right? And that is where the mastery of Test cricket comes in, and the test, and that's the test of Test cricket, right? To be able to do that consistently. And that's what makes players world class. And these are the nuances that I think that first mover advantage we were talking about with baseball, they have nailed at home, right? I agree with you. I think to negate the single option is the infield that I was talking about. The outfield is to negate the boundary option. How comfortable are bowlers going with this strategy with having lesser fielders as wicket-taking options? Say a Bumrah bowling with this against a Ben Duckett. How comfortable is he doing that? How comfortable is a Siraj or Prasidh Krishna doing that? Like, they're having issues hitting the right areas often enough as it is. Now, if you throw them, and they've come from first-class cricket where they are out-and-out match winners. Now, that's the mentality that they work with in first-class cricket. Throw them into Test cricket and ask them to play the defensive role. How much is their mind agreeing with their body to play that role? That complexity comes into a Test match. And how much can they perform their role that's defined to them becomes the challenge. That becomes the test that they have to go through in that Test match.
I'm going to throw a wildly different question at you here. I'm going to test your knowledge of cricket. Who's England's best bowler to the tail in Test cricket? Because every team,
the tail?
if you look at teams, most teams have someone that would stick out in your mind as they're a pretty good bowler against the tail, right? And it's Josh Tongue took those wickets, and a friend of mine was like, "Oh, finally England's going to have someone who's good against the tail." And I was like, "Who was their last good bowler against the tail?" Harmison was pretty good, but not as spectacular as I thought. Like, I looked at the numbers; they held up. The bowler I found, Robbie, was ridiculous, which is Matthew Hoggard. And now I have to send a message to Harmy going, why was Matthew Hoggard so good against the tail? Because that's not the kind of bowler you would normally think would be good against the tail, a little outswing bowler. But England have always struggled with this one role, and it's because of the wickets in England, right? They breed people who bowl outswing, seam bowling, back of a length, on a length, whatever that may be, nibbling it around. And that's quite often pointless against tailenders because tailenders can't nick those balls, right? Like, it's really hard for a tailender to hit those balls if you're bowling in that way. So I think the best bowler in modern cricket, and we don't have the stats going all the way back, but the best bowler in modern cricket is Shoaib Akhtar. I'm assuming Fred Truman, Waqar Younis would also be very high up in that list, and there'd be a couple of West Indians as well. But Shoaib Akhtar is the guy that we have the data on. And then you have, some of the leg spinners, of course. Stuart McGill was always a really good bowler against the tail. Shane Warne was another one. And England don't produce high-end fast bowlers that often, and they don't produce leg spin almost ever. And then you have bowlers like Rabada and Bolt who have found ways to dismiss the tail, right? And again, you think back and you're like, yeah, England don't really have that either. Like Jimmy Anderson was fine against the tail, but he wasn't like a destroyer of it. Broad wasn't particularly good against the tail. Wokes is terrible against the tail. Graham Swan was terrible against the tail. Andrew Flintoff was terrible against the tail. Like, it's a really weird subsection of English cricket that doesn't seem to quite work. And so if Josh Tongue can do that, he doesn't actually need to be a great bowler for England. He just needs to chip in against the top order players, bowl some bounces in the middle, and then come in and blow away the tail. But it's not a path that a lot of English bowlers have ever had before.
Well, again, I think this is the beauty of data, isn't it? And the more data you have, then you start defining roles even for things such as this, right? And earlier, when cricket was played, when there wasn't as much data, then what did you do then? What did players do then, right? Ideally, you'd either have a swing bowler or you have a fast bowler with an awkward action who would just be intimidating. Like an Andre Nell would have been chaos against tail enders, so to speak, because they're not used to. They didn't bat that much in the nets back then, so they're not used to playing wayward actions in the ball, like coming out of somewhere. It's weird, right? So, or like one of the guys I saw taking a lot of wickets against these tail enders was Vinay Kumar, right? He was someone who bowled medium pace after a certain point, and even in medium pace, just move the ball enough to get them LBW bowled. He wasn't even looking at slips in this one. It's just LBW bowled because they're not used to playing that little divot off the wicket or that little seam movement off the wicket, right? So for me, I think you either need someone with a wayward action or you need someone who can swing the ball well. So I'm not surprised Matthew Hoggard being the best bowler for England against tail enders, and Tongue as well. Again, wayward action, like not the most orthodox action, jerky it is, and that can sometimes put these tail enders off. So for me, I'm not surprised that he's the one.
But when you talk about Vinay Kumar or Matthew Hoggard, the difference is, and Vernon Philander, I think, a very good bowler against the tail as well. The difference with those guys is they probably have the ability to change their line and their length for the tail. Whereas if you look at most seamers, and I remember talking to Harmy about this, and he always said that like captains would say, "Oh, you need to pitch it up." And he's like, but I don't pitch it up. Like, you want me to change what I do. And I don't. When I pitch it up, it's floaty. And the tail end is going to hit it through covers. And everyone's going to think I'm an idiot, right? I don't have that delivery that you want. And it's the same with some of these swing bowlers of like, they don't have the. Like, Josh Hazlewood is a perfect example of he's become very good against the tail recently. But for a long time, never really took wickets against the tail. Chris Martin, the New Zealander, famously one of the worst bowlers against the tail of all time. Really good against top order players. So... It's that ability to be able to do that. And that's what's weird about England, is that other than Hoggard, they really haven't had many guys who have that ability to change it. But if you can get a Josh Tongue in, he can actually help them in three different ways. Because as you said, the action, even top order players, they want to play against someone. He falls over and it comes from over the top of his head. And it's awkward. No one wants to face that. It's a weird angle. Then you've got the fact that he can bowl bumpers. I don't think he's a good bouncer bowler, but he's fast enough to do it. And he can do it for a long period of time. He's not that. He hasn't played a lot of cricket, has he? I realize now he's 27. I realize now we just need every player's age available for Robbie on every podcast. But but
no, with fast bowlers, you always have to look at their age, right? Because you know how much time they have to make changes, and if you can mature into that kind of a bowler for them and serve them for a 5 to 7 year period, because that's when your teams become effective. Because especially with test matches, you have to have bowlers who can cause issues for players, right? Against tail enders, you generally want to be intimidating, or you want to be awkward, or you want to be super disciplined. Three options get your tail enders out. So intimidation, if you have an awkward action and if you can bowl good bouncers, that makes you truly intimidating as a fast bowler. And I think Josh Tongue's got the ability to do that, and can become that kind of a bowler for England, specifically for bowling in to the tail enders. That can be another nuanced kind of application of baseball implied cricket that England go with, not just in England but away from home as well.
I think it's fascinating to see where that develops, and also for a team like England who do use more analysis, although they just got rid of 2 of their analysts, didn't they? But they do use more analysis. It will be interesting to see if that's what that's what his role is going ahead. And also because Bryden Cast can do it. They might end up with a team out of nowhere where they have everyone who could take over the tail, and they've never had that before.
And
we talked about
even in his action is not the smoothest, right?
well, his action looks like he's about 2 deliveries from a hamstring injury. I think every time I watch him, it's so muscular. It's just like, oh, you're gonna snap something. I feel uncomfortable watching him. I really like the way he plays because he is one of those play with your chest type guys, right? Like he's just like, I'm gonna run through the crease. I'm gonna hit the ball really hard. I'm gonna throw myself in the field. So I hope he doesn't get injured. But you watch him just going. It looks like it's not repeatable.
Yeah, and injury prone maybe.
All right.
In the sense, God forbid.
Well, he has been injury prone so far in his career. So far we're right. I had some other questions about the test match, but I think we've talked enough about that. We've obviously got some stuff that we'll talk about next week as well. I wondered what your take was on Dilip Doshi, if you had a relationship with him or anything as a cricketer or as a coach or as a mentor or anything. He is one of the more interesting cricketers in Indian, sort of, maybe modern India is stretching it because he played in the 70s, but in the sort of new era of Indian cricket, in that he was quite outspoken quite a bit about some of the other legends within the game. He was probably one of the last sort of amateur spirit guys where he was like, I'm playing because I want to play for India, whereas everyone else is like, we love playing for India, but we also want to pay our mortgages. So he's like that last sort of thing. Incredible left arm finger spinner. If you go back and have a look at him, just have a look how slow he bowled. It's if you compare it to Jadeja, it's like watching. It's like he puts the ball in his hand and it just sort of floats down towards you. And he was a flight bowler even within his era. He's ended up with 100 wickets. Slow. Yeah, 100 wickets at 30 in an era when spin bowling was almost dying. Like he comes along in Test cricket just at that point where the West Indies are changing everything. So he still has a very, very good career. But yeah, I just wondered what your thoughts was on him as he's obviously just passed.
Well, obviously, it's I've interacted with him on a few occasions, and a very well-spoken gentleman. He loved the game of cricket, and I remember, like, if you compare him to Jadeja as a left-arm spinner, if Jadeja was normal speed, and he was probably 0.1x.
Yeah.
That's slow through the air, and he had the ability, and obviously because he bowled slowly, the ball dipped as well. I've watched videos of him, and I was, growing up, and I felt like he was slow through the air, and I felt like, I always thought, okay, if I had to play against a bowler like this, how would I approach it? And be like, one is trying to get to the pitch of the ball, because you're creating all the pace against it. He would have bowled very differently. His son also bowled, pretty slow left-arm spin as well, much like his father. And quite outspoken, definitely, as a human being. And I think, as with most Indian cricketers, when you're in the system, you have a lot to say, but you can't say it because it can impact your career. Yeah. And because of the
then you get out of the system.
Hello. It sounds like because you've been holding it in for so long, and no one really talks about it, and then when you voice it, it's not really welcome, and then you receive, whatever you do receive for it. But you gotta speak your truth at some point in time, right? You gotta be able to do it, because other systems allow for it, but the system in India it can impact your career, so you don't kind of say a lot whilst you're playing. You kind of hold your tongue, you bite your tongue. But then after you've finished and you know that, okay, they don't really have a say over your life. They probably had a say over your career, but now they don't have a say over your life. And then you can voice it a little bit more, and you do it in the best possible way that you deem fit. And I think, he was also one of those. He spoke his mind and spoke his truth, the way he perceived things, and it was welcome in a lot of places and not welcome in a lot of places. But certainly a personality who represented India, and always pray that his soul rests in peace.
Yeah, fantastic cricketer. Wonderful career. Didn't play for that long either, but took a lot of wickets in the short period of time that he did actually play for India. Okay, let's get to some super chats.
Yes, let's get to super chats.
Oh, I've just realized my screen's too small. Now I can't read them.
Sing a silly point. What's you you're giving away your age by saying it's too small. What's the fourth innings bowling since Jan 2022? Buddy, it's what we spoke about the entire episode.
Well, so I saw this question come up because it was the first super chat, and I had a look at it. So in 2022, the batting average in the fourth innings was 31. That's really high, right? Really, really high. Then it was 23, 25, and it's been 27 this year. Those are high, but not massively. If you have a look, there was a period between 27, what is that? 2006 and 2008, where every year it was over 30, right? We've had plenty of other years where it's high. It's not astronomically high. What you're looking at, Singh, is the fact that we're seeing more chases. We're partly seeing more chases because teams are more comfortable chasing. We're also seeing more chases because we have more test matches being played than ever before. The amount of tests that we finished a test match yesterday. There's a test match on now, although it might be raining in that one. I haven't checked in a little while. And there's a test match on this afternoon. Like, there are literally so many test matches. And so before, you didn't get that many games. And so a chase felt like a really rare event. Whereas now, people are a little bit more confident chasing in the fourth innings. And because of limited overs cricket, they don't quite see cricket the way that they used to. Some of the wickets are holding together, but we're seeing plenty of other wickets when no one's making any runs, no matter what the pitch is as well. But yeah, I don't think the numbers are suggesting that suddenly like teams are blitzing in the fourth innings with the bat. That maybe it's slightly higher than normal, but I would even argue it's probably not. It's about average for the fourth innings, around that 26, 27 mark. That's pretty normal. And so it's just that occasionally we're going to see great innings. You know, you look at Headingley specifically, that is a wicket that has changed. And we talked about it at the top, right? It is definitely different.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? He was asking about the fourth innings bowling, right? And the bowling, I think, is going the way it's going because of what we discussed in the pod today. You know, about having only one quality kind of super high quality match winner, and then he's had to do the heavy lifting whilst the others are struggling to hit the right areas and be consistent enough with that, with the strategies that baseball comes with right now. So those complexities also, as in, if you're speaking to this test match and if you're speaking to Indian cricket, then that's been the kind of perennial, I wouldn't say issue that they've had, but it's been the challenge that they've kind of encountered since 2022, 2023 perhaps.
I would also say that of modern times, bowlers aren't as good on flat wickets as they used to be, just because there aren't as many flat wickets. And so you get good on what you bowl on, right? So they are much better at bowling on the helpful wickets, just because if you play 8 test matches in a row and the ball's nipping around everywhere, and then you suddenly get to a fourth innings and it stops nipping around, you haven't been practicing those skills as much. Like, you can't be as good at that point. So I think that plays a part. But Sega asked an interesting one, because this is my big question about yesterday.
Sega. It's Sagar.
What? Sagar. How'd I go?
Yeah, but that was good. I like the enunciation of the R now. It's nice. Yeah. Sagar.
Why the fuck wouldn't they even try bowling bouncers when the pitch wasn't doing anything? I watched about 30 overs without a single bouncer being bowled. Now, this was also said of the Australians at Lords, by the way. I think at Lords it made a little bit more sense because that wicket just wasn't bouncing all that much. I think with inconsistent bounce here, but it was you still got the odd ball bouncing up, it probably would have made more sense to try some. Sure. It felt like they did go away from it too much.
It's what we spoke about, right? When we spoke about Shubman Gill becoming Test captain. Got to give him a little bit of time to settle in and figure out, you have to understand that before this happened to him, he wasn't like a senior pro in the side who got captaincy. He was a youngster who had a steady side a steady place in the side, who's become captain. You want to give him a little time to settle down and figure out his strategies and take control of the whole side. And this is going to be the test of fire that he was going to go through, and then he's going to have to apply and learn and apply all of those things very, very quickly for him to hold on to the captaincy over a period of time. And I think he's going to be captain of the Indian team for a year and a half, 2 years is for sure. Just to, at least for this cycle, I think he'll be the captain of the Indian side. But unless something very bad happens with his batting and he doesn't score runs at all, and India keep losing test matches, then they might look at something else. But for me, I think for this cycle, he's going to lead the side, and he's going to be the one to lead these discussions. So it's going to have him sit down with the bowlers and say, okay, these are our options. This is what the options we're going to have and utilize in test matches, and this is what the strategies that we will use based on if the wicket has, bounce, green, not green, flat, seam movement, no seam movement. they have to have a bunch of strategies in place when you say, okay, we apply this strategy here, we apply these three strategies in this test match, and then those are the strategies that your bowling unit will have to be ready with, to be able to execute. So you need a bank of bowlers that you can lean back on. So he's got to have to build all of these things, and these things take time, which is why we spoke about give him some time to settle in, and I think, that's what Sagar's talking about, and that's what India will have to take time to build on. And we as Indians are very, very impatient. We want everything to be done like that.
Unlike the rest of society now, which is incredibly patient. Siddharth says, do numbers show Indian tailenders have historically batted worse than centre tailenders because they train less, or is there another reason? So while Robbie was answering that last one, I looked this up because I thought this was fascinating. So I've looked from 1980s. If we take out Ireland, whose tailenders have been ridiculously good, but they've only played, 10 test matches. Which team do you think has the best 8, 9, 10, 11 since 1980?
Oh, man. Yeah. 8, 9, 10, 11?
Yeah.
Oh.
Can we get some thinking music?
Yeah, for when it goes on YouTube, you can get some thinking music. I really can't think of anyone. I think Australia.
So,
too late, buddy.
Yeah, good try, whoever that was.
Good try.
I think Australia would have been a fair guess. I probably would have gone South Africa, right? The team who has the best 8, 9, 10, 11 since 1980 is New Zealand. They average 18 runs per wicket for their tail. And that, remember, they did have Chris Martin playing for them for a while as well. South Africa is just.
Do you have your own software to ask these like random questions and you get these answers in less than a minute? What's going on?
You don't want to ask me about my software.
Like it is a software.
I have lots of things. I have lots of apps. Anyway.
Just when I asked about
South
software,
Africa
he froze.
17.5, so they're about half a run worse, which I'm surprised at because I would have thought they would have been better because they've had some great tailenders. India is just behind them at 17.10. So India is in front of Australia, England. So no, there isn't really a pattern there outside of the fact that those other teams. If we take away number 8s, right, India does drop a little bit further. So I don't know how much of that would be Anil Kumble, who was another number 8 that they would have had. Kapil Dev wouldn't have batted at 8, would they?
Javagal Srinath. Yeah,
so if we take away number 8s, because number 8 is a bit of a tricky position, we just look at 9, 10, 11. South Africa's at 14.3, New Zealand's at 14.2, so they're almost identical. Australia's at 14, India's at 13, and then England's at 12.5 below them. The teams that are really bad in the tail and have been all the way through their history is Sri Lanka and the West Indies. They've never had bowlers who can bat for whatever reason. I don't know why that has been the case. But there's nothing really that suggests that Indian tailenders are bad. They're either above average or around average. But one thing I would add to this, Robbie, is every single fan base in the world thinks their tail is terrible.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And see, the thing is, they didn't come off in this test match, and you ideally want them to come off.
Yeah.
And I think that Test cricket in England is always very, very special, not just for cricketers, but also the fans and the viewers as well across the world. So a lot more eyeballs on it. So a lot more criticism when things don't go and go team's way. So it was going to happen. If he didn't do well, then all these things are going to be nitpicked on. And I think it can happen. I think it was not just the tail, but even the lower middle order didn't fire in this test match. And that can happen. Karun Nair didn't come off after that, at number 6, and then Jaddu didn't come off at number 7.
Yeah.
So, I think the criticism is going to be there. But the focus will go off onto the tail. But I think the lower middle order also didn't really come to the fore in this test match.
I think that's actually a really interesting point. Kartik says, ever since Butter and Shastri, you can't hear me.
I've lost you. No,
what?
I've lost you. I can't hear you, but go ahead. If can the viewers hear you? I don't know if the viewers can hear you, but I have to mention that, guys. Jar did say that he had internet issues, and he said, just in case I go off online, it's because my internet guy is coming home today, and he's got an appointment. He's going to turn up at home today and figure out.
Stop talking about my Wi-Fi. Stop talking about my Wi-Fi. The guy hasn't turned up. I don't wait.
He didn't turn up yet.
He hasn't turned up yet. He's due. I did think it would be funny if, of all the podcasts, he turns up on this one, where we've had all of our issues. Have you done this question or not?
Oh no, no, no. I was just informing the viewers about
Stop telling
how
people
you
things.
mentioned to be about, mentioned to me about, your Wi-Fi guy coming and you got an appointment, and I was just going to lead with that to saying I can't believe he lives in England, which is considered a first world country today.
I'm not sure I consider London a first world country, but that's a different conversation for another day. Karthik says, ever since Bharat Aaron and Shastri were axed after the fallout with Virat and Ganguly,
They
there's
weren't
not
axed.
I mean, I'm just reading the question, but that's fair.
Yes, yes.
There is not a single good test bowler on earth half as good as Ishant. Okay. But
Okay.
whereas, okay, I don't know how to answer that. Do you know how to answer that?
Uh,
I mean, we've read it out.
yeah, but Karthik, what's the question? Oh, is it just a comment? It seems like it's just a comment. And yeah, agreeable. I think the way uh, you know, that team management operated was different, and every team management is going to be different, right? Each individuals are going to be different personalities, and you got to give them time to settle into their spaces. It's a new captain, new team management. They have like this team management is working with what, three different captains at this point in time, so they have to have three different approaches based on the captains as well. So that's going to take a little bit of time to settling into, and I think we as fans and supporters of Indian cricket will do well to give them time to settle in.
Also, it's a really weird because they've had such different career arcs, but I'm not sure that Prashid Krishna is not on a similar kind of trajectory to Ishant Sharma. He's a slightly different kind of bowler and everything else, but like that is a bowler that we have at least seen the raw bones of. And remember that Ishant had to bowl like 1,000 overs a game on his own at times because they didn't have the backup that he needed, which didn't help his development and blah, 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 blah. Role definition. Robbie can talk about that later. Kaushal says, can we bring Nitesh at 6 and play Jadu, Nitesh, Kuldeep all together for the next game? It will be 6 bowling options. So let's talk to the man who works in leadership. The problem with 6 bowling options is you think that's the best option available for you as a team because you've got so many. It's actually a very hard thing to manage as a captain.
You have too many options, and you'd always underbowl one or two bowlers, and then when you underbowl one or two bowlers, you'll be like, and if the batting doesn't click like it clicked in this test match, the next criticism will be, why did they go with 6 bowlers?
Yeah.
You could have played an extra batter. Or they would have actually said you could have played an extra batter easily, and you would have actually changed the course of this test match. So
just on that, like,
and that's the thing.
What Kaushal has said here. You've also got people who say Nitesh, like you said, Nitesh should have played ahead of Shardul. There are other people who said that Kuldeep should have played ahead of Shardul, or Akash. You can make any sort of arrangement of those things, and it's like the conversation is then endless. At a certain point, they just have to pick their side and they have to play better cricket. Like if they'd taken their catches, they probably still win this game, even though they didn't play particularly well all the way through.
Yeah.
Lentils says, I was like, yeah, lentils. We all like lentils. Can we please get Prashid to talk to Ishant on what lengths to bowl? That's quite interesting. I want you to answer that. But should Arshdeep be brought in and then Siraj can be the third seamer?
Arshdeep should be brought in. It depends again if third seamer can be Siraj. Yeah, sure. I think there'll be a lot less pressure on him. But again, I think role definition needs to happen. I think when Ishant played, for the most part, he had roles to play, especially in the second half of his career. There were roles clearly defined to him. He wasn't your lead bowler. He was your second or third seamer, right? And so his roles was clearly defined to him. So yeah, Prasid also is a little bit of a personality. He's got a mind of his own. He thinks independently, and he's someone who likes to also, he considers himself a match winner as well, and he was a match winner for Karnataka when he played first class cricket. So and he's got the ability to become a match winner in test match cricket as well. But I think he'll have to certainly, I think roles need to be defined to him. I don't know if it is or it hasn't been defined to him, but he has to execute such said roles. He can definitely speak to Ishant, and Ishant will share the same things we're saying, that role. What is your role? What is the role that you're supposed to play? And then are you performing that role to the best of your ability? And if you're not, then let's figure out what your role is. And based on your role, what do you need to execute to each batter?
Also, really good news, I think, on this is that he's already started talking to Stuart Broad. So he's found another tall bowler to talk to, and to have these conversations with. These are all very, very good signs that this is a player who will try and solve problems on his own. Rutten says, has anyone played ODIs more selfishly than Kohli in the 2023 World Cup against Bangladesh, scoring last 30 runs, New Zealand close match still, South Africa below par score? Can I suggest watching any ODI cricket from the 80s or the 90s? Sodom Gavaskar once made 36 not outs because he decided that the total was too high. There's plenty of players who played selfishly. I don't really understand the question.
I'm just so random. I'm like, what? Where did this come from? We were talking about Test cricket in roles.
Sidaf says, Robbie, how do you judge to persist with the fielder after drops for his confidence or move him to non-catching positions? But the other thing I want to ask is that, like, you will know this in international cricket, you quite often field in a position that you don't field in domestically, right? So it's, there's a very big chance that he was like a short leg fielder or a first slip fielder or a mid-off or mid-on fielder. And then he gets to the international level and they're like, your third slip, your fourth slip. And sometimes players just haven't done it before.
Yeah, and see, I'll tell you one of the things that we used to do, right, with red ball cricket especially, is that we used to take catches off a baseball bat. I'm telling you, boy, that is hard work. And we would do that for an hour as a team, right? And when we did that, we got really good. And the guys who were really good in slips anyway got even better, right? They got world class at slips. And we were famously known for being one of the best slip cordons in the country. And I can tell you with my hands up that for me, sustaining concentration at slips and switching on, switching off, I was not the best at. With wicket keeping, it was great. I loved it. But because I was keeping fielding to be a very effective slip fielder or one of the best in the team, I was not. I was a decent slip fielder. I would take good catches, but I would also miss a few, So I know the one thing that she could do is slip catches off a baseball bat coming at pace. It keeps you on point, and you need to put in like hours. Like Manish Pandey was one of those guys who would put in like 45 minutes, just him and the wicketkeeper and one more guy, two more guys just catching slips for 45 minutes, right? You get really good at that. Now, how do you judge whether to persist with a fielder after drops for his confidence? Is to take him out of the catching position with the intent of putting him back there, but putting him to work, right? I would put Yashasvi to work right now with the baseball bat. Half an hour, 45 minutes of his practice session, of every practice session, is of him taking catches with that baseball bat. To both spin and fast bowling, to him to focus on, if he's going to be the silly point fielder, then that's where he's at as well, right? If those are his designated positions in Test cricket, then that is where you get into field and make him spend a good amount of practice doing just that. And then that's his role that's defined on the field outside of his batting. So he needs to figure out as an athlete how much time he invests to fielding and how much time he invests with his batting. How does that split work at practice for him?
Practice is a weird thing for slips. I was a slip fielder as well. And it's a weird thing because when you're doing slip fielding in practice, you're expecting the ball come to you every 3 or 4 balls, right? And you might
that's what keeps you honest with the baseball bat, eh? I'm sorry to interject. What keeps you honest with the baseball bat is the same ball, the way you hit it can go to gully, but that same ball, if it hits at a different angle, can go to first slip.
Yeah, and so
it keeps you very honest.
We used to do this thing as well, where we would have the roller in the middle, and the keeper would take all the balls, but then just one in about 15 would go to slips, and so it meant that you had to stay alert. Like if you're not a normal slip fielder, it's very hard. The other thing is, as I said before, if you're a first slip fielder and you start fielding at third and fourth, I struggled a lot more at third and fourth because they're not the same position at all.
It's not. Yeah.
I was much better at gully and first slip than I was at third and fourth. And that sounds ridiculous, but it's just the way that they work. Same. So these are just tricky little things that, like, again, you have to understand that younger players coming through are going to have. Alistair Cook was a terrible slip fielder when he first came through. And by the end of his career, he was fine. He was never great, but he was fine.
I think he was very good.
Yeah, he was okay. He was...
You're a very critical man.
Yeah, you know I am. He was dependable, right? Which is half the job, right? But that was because of how long he stood at slips, right? Like at a certain point, you get better by doing the job over and over again. Next big thing, says, Indian test team on downfall since VK left. So we've had the anti-VK message. Now we're having the pro-VK message. Since he left test captaincy, blah, blah, blah. He goes on to name the stats here. it's almost like the team is moving on age-wise, and some of the really experienced players are not as good as they used to be, and so the team's not as good. It may not always have something to do with the magic captain theory.
Yeah, man, it's just transition in cricket. This is the ebbs and flows of life and the ebbs and flows of just Test cricket and Indian Test cricket. And it's gonna happen. You're gonna have great highs, and when those players go, then there's gonna be a little bit of a lull, and the younger guys have to come through the ranks and take it back to a high again. It's just life, guys. It's not like this is not one particular person. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to the rest of the team and the guys who are playing right now as well.
Well, funnily enough, the next message is almost identical in the way that it goes about it. Shivangi says, Gautam Gambhir, Test coach, 0-3 at home, never lost at home under VK. Just remember that Gautam Gambhir and Virat Kohli are two different roles within the job, because people keep pretending that they're both captain and coach. That's not actually how cricket works. Lost ball to Gavaskar after 10 years. Make India great again in Test. That's not a great slogan, just so that you're aware. That's like that's a slogan you want to distance yourself from in general.
Why, Shivangi? Why?
But again, what we're talking about is a changing of team. We've got some injury. It wasn't that long ago. Like Virat Kohli had an incredible fast bowling attack available to him. This fast bowling attack is not the same.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? People don't look at these aspects from a deeper perspective, and in a nuanced manner that it deserves to be looked at, right? And when you look at it from that perspective,
there's another one. What's happening? Another one. Archie says India's Test downfall started in 2022 after Virat. Guys,
should we even try?
Well, okay. So if we go back to that period, they had Bumrah, Ishant Sharma, late career Ishant Sharma. Mohammad Shami was still bowling, and I'm missing someone. Siraj was starting to do well. Oh, and Umesh Yadav was incredible at home, right? Like incredible figures at home. That is 5 international quality fast bowlers, which meant that even when you had injuries, even when you had to rest players, you had this incredible backup, right? At the moment, let's look at what they're using in these current tests. It's not the same. Like, you basically, I can't remember who wrote this book recently. I can't remember if it was in Nathan Lehman's book or Tim Wigmore's. But if you look at the history of cricket, you essentially, to be good home and away in Test cricket, you need a platoon of fast bowlers that are fit and can all take wickets and fit together really well. And if you don't have that, you lose. We have to stop going on about captaincy. I say the same thing all the time, and Robbie's old enough to know exactly what I'm talking about. There is no proof in the world that anyone could give me that Steve Waugh was a better captain than Heath Streak.
Yeah. It's all relative.
Archie is all in on the Kohli stuff. I think we've done enough Kohli. Muntaj says, agree with J-Rod, obviously. Bumrah 3 tests feels like injury management rather than injury prevention. Yeah, I think you've said it way better than what I was trying to say. Whereas that's what makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable about it. Like, I understand why they're doing it. I don't want to have a go at them because I do understand the idea behind it. But that's how I feel, that it feels like they're trying to manage him when he's not 100% rather than what usually happens, whereas you're like, we don't want him to get to the point where he's not 100%.
Do you go to the press conferences?
I wasn't at this last test because I was camping. Do you remember I had to go camping?
Yeah. No, but I'm saying, do you actually go to these and can you actually ask questions?
Yes, I can go to press conferences. Yes, I can ask questions. I haven't done it for a long time, partly because my job changed, and and quite often I'm trying to record after the play or do it now these days. Do a podcast with TalkSport. But in the old days, I asked lots of questions.
Can you ask one of your colleagues to ask Bumrah or somebody there if he's 100% fit? Do we know that?
Yeah. No, we can do that. We can get there. I know people. I can do that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Do you know the cricketers used to call, there's a specific question, you'll like this, and I think you'll even know what I'm talking about. The cricketers used to refer to them as crick info questions, because most questions are, how do you feel that you won? How do you feel that you lost? What was that like to make that 100, whatever? And the crick info question is, so in the 23rd over, when you decided to bring out the second slip, and it's like, I remember you could actually see like Stuart Broad just glaze over and be like, I don't care, shut up, just ask me how I'm feeling, and so we can get this done. So yeah, that was when it was me and Brettig and Monga and Dobell, like that was peak nerdery at Crick Info back in that era.
I don't think it's injury prevention either. I think it's management, but because
it could be.
I think, and the thing is, I for me, I'm I'm trying to explain why I think what it is. It is what it is, and why he's playing 3 test matches. I think it's a more, let's have this match winner for as long as possible till we build the others up as well. That's my thing.
Vibol says, do the other bowlers not take responsibility subconsciously because of Bumrah? If they can't find a solution, they look at him when it's their job to. So this is what we talked about before, of players like that create such a vacuum, right, that you, even when you don't mean to, you sort of subconsciously drift into second or third position when you're around them. And it's not an easy thing. What Bumrah does is not normal. Like, he is... whether he goes on to be the greatest fast bowler of all time, he's still, you know, that's the next 5 or 6 years. But there's never been a more complete bowler than him. And so if you're comparing yourself to him or watching him bowl at the other end, you can actually sort of, I don't want to say psych yourself out, but it can affect the way that you see yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with the other bowlers, I'm sure that they're taking responsibility. I don't think for someone like Siraj, it's the lack of effort, to be very honest. Because you can see he's trying to do something. You know, he's trying to, you know, create something there. He's chasing outcomes. I don't think it's a lack of trying. I think it takes time to build this stuff. Like with fast bowling being the toughest skill to execute in cricket, it takes that much more out of a player. So I think they will find a solution. I think it will take a little bit of time.
And Fahir says, Jared, was nice to see you in the Sony docuseries. I didn't know that was out, actually. So yes, go and watch it. What was that? It was on the last India-England series, which is the one where I broke my arm. So in the middle of it, like, they were like, do you have any other stories about this series? And I was like, well, I didn't cover all of it because it's the one where I smashed my arm up and ended up, you know, almost losing my arm and everything. And then they were like, tell us about that. And I was like, why do you need this? For your we'll do a proper... I was one that when you're coming over to the UK, I will come up with a bunch of just individual episodes that we could do on all this sort of stuff. If you want to hear the gory details about how I almost lost my arm, we can do that. But we'll save that for another day. I did see here, Robbie, that we have one of the graphics from my video. I don't know why we just plug in my videos, but I saw that there. We don't have any memes this week, probably because the test match was on, so the team were busy. But this is one of the more incredible graphics you will ever see. This is all the highest the 40 highest
Headingley,
chases in the history of Test cricket, and Headingley is 15% of them. 15%.
And
so Durban,
like, imagine
is 3.
imagine how much confidence that gives to a team batting fourth in Headingley.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? And so the first one,
the first one was 1948, 404 runs. But imagine in 1948, you're going into the last day and you have to chase 404 runs, and you go there and you smash it. Imagine how hapless that England team must have felt.
Yeah,
They'd be like, why have we been time traveled into some future of cricket that doesn't exist?
And that's what I like about it as well. Like, it's that one.
Morning to lunch break, come back, it repeats, and then you go to tea and you think, okay, there'll be an ebb in the flow. We're like, no, we're going to add more to it. Imagine that. Man,
well, I wonder if, because Bradman's involved in that one, there is an element of he can do anything anyway, and so you can kind of accept it. I think my favorite two are the Mark Butcher one, right, where Mark Butcher just becomes Brian Lara for one innings, and Australia's just like, wait, what? How has this happened?
That's when I became a Mark Butcher fan. I'm like, who is this guy, dude? And he was pretty well on. He was 34 or something when he played that innings.
He wasn't young. He'd been around for a while. He wasn't young. Certainly,
he was there for a while.
And then the other one, of course, is the Shai Hope Craig Brathwaite one. We just like, Shai Hope never made another 100. Like, he made 200s in that test match, Robbie, and he never made another 100 after that. Like, there's some random stuff in that record. It's really worth having a look at. And traditionally, Headingley, not a great place to bat in the fourth innings. Like, it's all, the last couple of years, obviously it's changed and it's a lot better now, but it's still not, even in first class cricket, it's not a great place to bat in the fourth inning. So it's fascinating that we keep seeing these things over different eras with these different players and everything else. That's it. Us done for this week. Me and Robbie will see you again next week. Please like and subscribe and follow and tell your mum about us. This is KimAppa. We'll see you next week.